Ash, I really appreciate the time for this conversation. And as I've told you before, I feel like you and I have something in common. We've both experienced the loss of a professional baseball team. The Expos moved away from Montreal about 20 years ago. The A's have just departed Oakland as we're recording this conversation. Give me your personal memories and reflections on the final, I don't know, years or months or even days of the Expos. Where were you at? What were you doing?
Sure. Well, I mean, the final days, ironically, I had a full-time job as a columnist and vice president of partnerships at an online men's magazine called Ask Men. Noteworthy because I was a columnist that also wrote a sports business article. Just we'll put that aside. And but as we were kind of like pre the podcast era, I was like, I think we should test like audio, like radio, and again, like what we do now. So I started again, like kind of like a leader leading from the front. I said, let me start hosting, producing some radio shows. And one was like a lifestyle show, dating, relationships. The other one was a sports business show, which was unique on a sports radio that covered the Expos. But then as a fan, I also was doing just like This Week with Expos, right? So doing that, I had the season tickets and I was really into it. And previously, maybe my first game, I was born in 78, so I'm aging myself, but maybe it was like 87. I'd go to one or two games every like few years even because the stadium was a bit far out. And like in Montreal, it's hockey. It's kind of like unapologetically, it's a hockey city. And I grew up playing soccer. But I was really into the Expos, but also even before I was an entrepreneur, I guess I had that like thing of solving problems. And I had these plans, but this was pre-streaming. So like they weren't good plans because at the time the Expos were in a checkmate situation. But the main takeaway was I realized I'm not in a position to have any impact. I'm in a position right now in 2004 where I could reach out to people, try to convince them, appeal to emotions, and being a business grad, being a business person, I could maybe like explain to them in a spreadsheet. But I myself was like, there's no way out. Like this is kind of not solvable in an ethical way. I don't want to, mislead an investor. So they left, but that led me to start Watch Mojo. Because that's what led me to realize, like, if you want to have an impact, if you want to make change, you have to be an entrepreneur. So I started Watch Mojo, and we always joke, like, this is a signed Delino the Shields card that I would use as a prop, like when Lorne Michaels on SNL would be like the Beatles. Here's a $5,000 check. In the early days of Watch Mojo, we did everything before the top 10 lists on pop culture. We do comedy skits and sketches. It was like the poor man's version of SNL. But occasionally I whip this out and be like, and we could settle this confrontation. It was like a gimmick. Anyway, I never even think about it. That's Brad Wilkerson bobblehead from the last year. And I have a ball there from the last game of the Expo. So clearly a fan. But I moved on. And then fast forward to 2012, when I went on a business trip, one of my advisors was the former president of National Geographic, Ted Prince. He was like, come down to, I was trying to raise money. Watch Mojo at that point in 2012 had racked up $1 million of accumulated losses, which if you're in New York, you're like, that's like two lunches on a Sunday brunch kind of tab. But in Montreal, that's a fortune. And I basically only started Watch Mojo with $250,000, which was my proceeds from the company. And the only reason I'm transparent now, because I'm like, you built your balance sheet, you built your reputation, your goodwill. If you want to make this happen and bring the Expos back, like it's got to be like, like 2 minutes left, NFL, like you got to just score. Like, anyway, so for me, 2012 was closure. But when I saw this year, the documentary on Netflix, Who Killed the Expos, again, it was more closure. It was like I've produced a documentary called Fox in the Hen House. And so I looked at it from a storytelling lens and I was like, this does a good job. But it was a recap. Like there was nothing really like new. And then for Watch Mojo, because we're known for our top 10 list featuring clips of movies and sports, we're expanding into podcasts. So we did a podcast. It was like, it would make sense to review it. So I kind of ranked who are the culprits. I was like, the documentary enumerates people, but it was actually to be constructive, to be like, my takeaway, just so you don't think I'm a very positive guy. I go, this glass, this is just juice. This is pineapple juice. I was like, it's half full or half empty. You decide if you look at it as half full or half empty. So my takeaway there was these were actually all still people that tried. Like even number one of the culprit tried.
To keep the Expos in Montreal.
Yeah, like they tried at one point or another. Now you can
Yeah.
blame them for a tactic, but it's weird to blame these people because even the radio host guy that was like "Les maudits d'anglais" or like baseballs or this or that, I was like, no, no, no. These people at least talked about the sport. They, it's like even the people that criticized me or Watch Mojo early on, I was always like, at least you looked at it. I'm like, you cared, you gave your time.
Right.
And I'm like that. I mean, you have to be confident to do any of this, but I like to be modest in this. But so yeah, but that wasn't the trigger. It's very weird. I was watching the Colorado Avalanche in their 30th year, and I like the Colorado Avalanche, great players, playing the Montreal Canadiens. But because Colorado used to be known as the Quebec Nordiques, they were wearing the Quebec jerseys. And yeah, I mean, I basically said something to the effect of like, I understand why Colorado does this. I don't blame them. I get the sports business, marketing, sales side, the anniversary. But I'm like, imagine your girlfriend dumps you, uh, prints a t-shirt with your face on it, goes and makes love to her new boyfriend, records it, live streams it en plus, sends you the link, and she's like, watch this and tell me how you feel. And I was never a Quebec's fan. As a Habs fan, I mean, I kind of supposed to hate them. Again, I don't hate anybody. But so I kind of then reached out to a local radio host named Elias Makos, who used to be the PR guy at the Expos. And my question was rooted ultimately in being a finance business guy who's always talking to investors. I was like, do you think the fan base is here? I'm like, I know there's been some like emotional outpouring of feelings since the documentary. But I was like, is there really any interest left, or is this a bunch of old guys that have like nostalgia? And he kind of chatted with me. And I mean, I'm a writer, I'm very emotional gut, but I'm also like analytics. I'm not the Moneyball guy, but I mean, data is there, use it, like look at it. So I said, do you mind if I create a survey? I'm like, if I post it on Ash or Watch Mojo's, like, I'm like, it's going to be the wrong people. I go, I want to start off with the people that follow the Montreal Expos
Right.
account on X. I want to see what they have to say. And as a data guy, I was blown away. It wasn't like, oh, we could extrapolate and assume. It was like blaring. And I was like, the passion and all amplified because maybe of the Netflix and whatever the reasons. So then I sprung into action knowing that there's capital available for sports franchises and those and funds invest in an entrepreneur, any city. It just so happens here that the startup would be a sports team. The entrepreneur in residence happens to be in New York, a finance grad, an operator, super passionate, both crazy like a fan passionate, but also super conservative, like from a governance and, like I mean,
Business
you look
side
at
of
our business,
things.
you think I was like some auditor from Ernst and Young running the business. So I just kind of threw my hat in the ring because I was like, the people want this. And as an entrepreneur, you don't really do things to make yourself happy. You do it because you see a greater good. It sounds very naive. So 10 days in, there's been some progress, and it speaks to the power of YouTube. It speaks to the
Yeah.
power of the internet. It speaks to the power of sports and storytelling. Anyway, and entrepreneurship.
Well, let me ask you this. It seems like as much as you're a business guy, a sensible guy, like just going back to the Expos departure, it seems like it pissed you off. Like you wanted to do something over time to kind of, I don't know, not retaliate, but
Well,
you wanted to have a comeback in this.
yeah, but I'm not it upset me. Let's use that word, and then like go, put my camera, today in face of like some poor cashier. Like I'm not that kind of upset. It's
Yeah.
more okay. Let's go back to the drawing board
Yeah.
and how can we solve this
Right.
problem? It upset me not because I thought MLB was bad. I don't even really blame Claude Brochu, never the Bronfman family. Like I'm not that kind of person. I always see the good in people. I see things as very like the glass is half full. It upset me, yes, when I was younger, saying like, well, why wouldn't like successful, wealthy people do this? But I'll tell you why. The days of like a wealthy guy who was lucky and worked hard to, but every luck is part of everything. But so worked hard, whatever, sacrifice, to build a net worth of 500 million, and maybe for diversification or as a fan, write a check of of 100 million. Those days are gone. Sports franchises over the last few decades have appreciated more as an asset class, an investable asset class than any other.
Right.
We're talking over a 60-year period. There's this Ross Arctos index. 13% per annum over 60 years is like Tom Brady level returns, just to be fair. So But that means today, if you fast forward to 2025, you need billions to buy a team. So even if you have $10 billion, and look, I'm a nobody, but I get a lot of wealthy investors, investment funds, entrepreneurs, people, executives, people call me for opinions because they're like, you saw the future of YouTube. So like I'm not a futurist, I hate that term, but they're like, you seem to know where things are going. And the things I know well. If you ask me to put a nail in the wall, you're dead. That frame ain't going up on the wall. Um, but so I could see that, yes, at the time, nobody was going to invest in a team. And frankly, being intellectually honest, it would be unfair and unreasonable to expect them to. So that didn't bother me. But I said, if you're somebody that views money as energy to be allocated to something, like I didn't earn money to make more money. I earned money to put it to use, hire people, build things, right?
Right.
And this just happens to be something that has so much impact and utility to the city and joy to the fans. So it upset me in that I said it's a shame you couldn't be useful. So when I did watch a Netflix in the back of my mind, and then that Colorado game, I said, my friend, when you were 20 years ago saying, why don't people that could have an impact, not necessarily write a check, but just make a play, make a pass. You saw the Islanders player a week ago. He tore his ACL as he was skating back in pain. He still found a way to steal the puck, pass it. I tore my ACL playing, representing Canada at a tournament in Dubai. That is really hard. I couldn't even walk off the field. So I was like, that's what makes hockey players so great. Anyway, too many tangents. But the point was, it's just that I realized I would be a hypocrite if I was in a position now to do something, and also not something that like makes me money. There's nothing in it for me near term. It's just, or even mid and long term. It's just seeing the impact. I'm like, you don't want to be what you not criticized, but what you kind of questioned 20
Right.
years ago.
I love your quote that goes right with this. You said, on my deathbed, I'd have comfort knowing I explored impossibility rather than ignored opportunity. That was my original reason for pursuing entrepreneurship in the first place. I have no idea where this journey leads. It may go nowhere, but I didn't become an entrepreneur to be a spectator again. So, I mean, I think you're also even acknowledging that what you're going to try and do here is extremely difficult. It might even be impossible, but you got to shoot your shot, right?
Well, yes, as Wayne Gretzky used to say, you miss 100% of shots you take. But I would say that when I was talking to this with my spouse, who actually is a co-founder in the company and my life partner, I was like, look, I go, ultimately, let's be honest, and she knows me, obviously. I was like, it's your call in a way. I'll explain. Because I said, even though this is a long process and it doesn't require that much of my time and it's all synergistic with everything else that I do with Watch Mojo and elsewhere, I was like, yeah, I'm like, it's gonna be a challenge because it's patience. It's not something that I could immerse myself in a month.
Right.
Like, entrepreneurs, it's like there's no roadmap, there's no system. It's kind of like football in 1900, where you just figure it out. It's now there's like a playbook, West Coast offense or whatever. So once I actually, after my initial energy, I was like, wait a minute, there's a process, there's a timeline. If I just prepare myself and show them that I'm somebody they could trust, the capital's not the constraint. The team, subject to MLB, they're the only kingmaker here and
Right.
not me, the king being the city. I was like, we will get a team. We'll be in a good position to get a team. Now, am I patient or not? So that's also the thing that I'm a nobody, but I've overcome bigger challenges building a business. Watch Mojo, just think of the clips we use in the copyright risk.
Oh, it's a
Just
lot.
think of
Yeah.
operating on YouTube. So at that point, though, it was all abstract. Imagine convincing like YouTube's lawyer or Fox's lawyer of our like use of clips under fair use and like triangulate this to them when you're not even a lawyer. Like that's a taller cliff, and you have to do it with humility, with confidence. So that was challenging. YouTube changes something and you just get this wave that kills you. That is a challenge. I got sued by my old employer, totally frivolous. I defeated them. I didn't even have the means to hire a lawyer. I went in myself as like, yes, both Dr. Bean, Mr. Bean, like layman lawyer, but also a very confident, student of everything.
Right.
But even like, so my point is, This is actually, I don't want to under, I don't want like I mean, I was only doing local media, but I'm a very servant person. So if you said you want to chat, I would never be like I'm not. So anybody that wants to chat, I'm available. But my goal is not to like be on like American media to talk to MLB. I'm just very happy that MLB gave a nice no comment to our local paper, like the Montreal Gazette, when they wrote about it, because I'm like, oh, that's all I wanted. I wanted them to know that they have this
You exist.
option
Yeah.
that I exist. And
Yeah.
I'm also not like, I want to just be very clear. Um, Montreal was very lucky that Charles Bronfman, son of Sam Bronfman, the original founder who started the Seagram Alcohol Company, he brought the Expos and his son Stephen, who's, I'm 47, I believe he's in his 60s. The city has nothing to criticize their efforts. But I also think we cannot both criticize wealthy, successful families and people, but then also on the other side be like, why don't you do this or that?
Right.
Like he's a custodian of this empire, whereas I've started this, like I'm his grandpa, so my risk aversion is different. Whereas he has to preserve this, like it's just people have the lack of sophistication, the way I don't know how to put a hammer in the wall. And I understand that. And I speak the language of financiers. These are investors that for 2 decades always liked what I was doing. They believed in me for many reasonable reasons. They did not like the Watch Mojo, like producing content, YouTube. So they didn't invest. So there is a little bit of like a, hey, good luck with that business, pal. And now they're like, I always believed in you, buddy. But they know Watch Mojo is one of the greatest investment returns in our racket. So just through circumstance, I was like, these guys are now coming to me asking me for what's next. Because I was talking about how YouTube was going to enter its golden era. Like I was like, Watch Mojo is where MTV or ESPN was in 1990, not in 1980 when like they did their own makeup and they were playing, or ESPN was playing lacrosse second division Connecticut League. But I'm like, they've built something. Now they're going to go parabolic. I was really going down another path. I was going down a path of getting into scripted stories, and I'm going to do that. But being a big sports fan, when then these big, large funds that are focused to invest in sports franchises now, they're like, if you're in Montreal, they're like MLB. And one guy actually, the funniest thing. So this was really out of this process that Watch Mojo was doing. But then once I started to write about it, people want to place money to earn their big fees. One of them that I've known, so he was comfortable to say this. Otherwise, I think most of them are such pros that they're like they would think this is purpose. Let's just say what he wants to hear, and then we'll come in as the devil, like end of days, just for profit. But one guy that I knew and he was comfortable, he's like, "Can I just ask you a question, Ash?" I'm like, "Please give me feedback." He's like, "Why don't we just like go buy the San Diego Padres?" I'm like, They're for sale." He's like, "You just buy them. We get to deploy capital. Basically, we start earning fees right away." He's like, they're there. Don't move them. You get to be this, not hero, but like, it's not a relocation threat. He's like, you then could live there eventually. And when you retire, like, but I was like, okay. But I was like, okay, that is a path that is like less
Would you
complicated.
do that though?
Probably,
It seems like you want this for Montreal. Like, I
I
get it.
don't
Like,
know.
yeah.
I mean, like, first of all, yeah, I'm 47. I love my job. Watch Mojo is going to enter its like great golden
Yeah.
years. My team, even though we still work from home largely, is here. But what it led to was this bigger thing, which was like, well, because investors don't want just one thing.
Right.
Investors need to see a path to invest more money, deploy more capital. So I was like, look, I go in the live sports entertainment realm. I got no shortages of ideas, and that's when they actually got more excited because they also saw a very pragmatic, practical, serviable person who's like, yeah, okay, we'll buy this team in Charlotte. We'll buy this. Like my daughter plays volleyball, so one day I was thinking about like a youth volleyball tournament, starting in Montreal, where you invite like high school teams from Vermont, upstate New York, Ontario, and like so. I'm always thinking of these like community things, but this just happens to be a far bigger
Yeah.
community thing, and I'm built on it like this. It's called 4C, like I foresee the future, but 4Cs, creative, cultural, commercial center or campus. If you type in montrealmojo.com, I just used that URL this week as a shortcut. It'll take you to it, and it just basically takes you through this massive development of like a campus where you have museums on Expos history, icons of Canada, icons of our beautiful province of Quebec and Montreal. And the things that make Montreal
Yeah.
this great city, it's like a big ad for Montreal. So this is actually easier in a way. Not that it's easy, but it's easier than what I built at Watch Mojo. And I kind of feel like, again, if like tomorrow there's a flood, my skill sets in Excel and Google and email are useless. And we turn to carpenters and, other people. But for this challenge in 2025, it's matchmaking with PE, private equity funds, it's sequencing, and it's just an act of diplomacy, which are things that I'm
Good at,
kind of
yeah.
good at.
So let me ask you this, real quick. What is Project Peanut? Why is it called Project Peanut?
So in investment banking, every company has a term. Like we were in 2020 when we sold 25% of our business to a New York-based private equity fund. It was like Project Sponge because the banker realized I'm a Seinfeld fan. So we called it that. This time, the project, we're represented by Oakland's De Silva in New York. It's called Project Powers for Austin Powers and Mojo.
Okay.
So it's just like in the industry. So I wanted like a perfectly bilingual name, but this went very quickly. So I just went with peanut, as in like you eat
Baseball
peanuts
game.
at a
Yeah. All right. Simple
baseball.
as that. You mentioned the money part. I mean, it blows my mind to even think about how much you'd need. Now, you've also said that the biggest challenge is just getting baseball to open up an expansion slot. Like that's the hardest part. You said pretty much everything else is solvable. So like, I'm thinking couple billion dollars for a ballpark, couple billion dollars for an expansion fee, couple billion dollars to pump into the actual business of the baseball side. I mean, you got to be talking about 8 to 10 billion just to start this.
No, no,
Can you
no.
do? Can you do
Okay,
that?
so let's start off. I can, but it's not. I'm not here to be a hero. Let's break
Okay.
it down.
Okay.
So there, let's start macro. There
Okay.
are trillions of dollars out there that are not optimizing their return on capital
Right.
because the way you might have money in a savings account before you invest in a stock,
Right.
but at scale. So there is a lot of money. But that's okay. That money could be earmarked for health. It could be earmarked for a different asset class. Again, finance is my thing. Like not to brag, I could have been a pretty successful investment banker, analyst, investor. I mean, I love it, but it was an education to for me become something else. So, but even when it comes to private equity, there is a lot of money on the sidelines. But again, some of it was earmarked when they raised it. They told their limited partners, so the pension funds, the sovereign states, wealthy people that don't directly have the time to invest, but invest through these funds, like they have a different profile. But there are these funds that are broad media and entertainment, but then there's some that are really geared towards experiences, like Ari Emanuel, the genius of William Morris Endeavor and the UFC gentleman. I read something like a month ago where he's like, I'm betting big on entertainment. Why? Live entertainment is a hedge against everything, like against a recession. Outside of COVID, it's kind of like you're also not paying the Google tax for ads or the Amazon tax for e-commerce. Like it's a smart play. It takes work, it takes creativity and business, which I have, but I'm just saying it makes sense why there's all this money going into it. So when I was this year, we talked to companies I wanted to buy Watch Mojo or invest, but I was leaning towards a sale. It was cleaner, but I'm open to both. It was a lot of like, we're going to buy you and just keep doing the same, but a bit more. And that's fine. I have a role. I'm a professional. Like you get drafted by a team you don't like, you still show up, right? But I was like, again, I'm a pro. It's not like it's not complex to me, but I understand. But then there were others who are like, we'd like to partner or invest to go big, but big could mean organically, like you're a team and you sign one more player, or you're like, we're going to go all out and sign 4 free agents. Like big means you have to ask. So they're like, what are your big ideas? And I gave them this menu of ideas, but sometimes people are like, okay, this guy has clearly got ideas. He's demonstrated a track record. What's the biggest idea you have? I got the biggest idea I have is huge. We're not even going to go there. But I'm like a slightly bigger idea. I'm like, and then I took them through expansion, sports franchises. So MLB, basically, I think next year they might have a labor stoppage. And earlier when I was
They might.
here,
I think they will. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
oh, but the funny thing is at 47, 20 years at Watch Mojo, I've become very like zen about this stuff. Even 3, 4 years ago, I would have been like, I'd love to be like the mediator and negotiator and bring peace. Don't forget, when I was in high school, I thought my goal, my dream job was to bring peace to the Middle East. I was like, I'm objective, but now I'm like, I'm not crazy. I'm not going to burn into a burning house. But now I'm like, I don't have to play hero. I just have to follow a process, show them I'm professional, show
Right.
them I'm honest. My track record speaks for itself. Like Warren Buffett says, you have 20 years to build your reputation, 5 minutes to lose it. That is true. But Warren Buffett said something else that I learned in this last 10 days. Warren Buffett is known as the greatest investor of all time, but who he looks at the GOATs are entrepreneurs. Like when he talks about Tom Murphy of ABC Capital Cities, he goes, "You taught me so much about operations, execution, people." Investors realize that without the right person, there's nothing. It's a it's an accelerant to waste your money.
Yeah.
So a lot of people emerged in the last 10 days is they said, and these are people, I don't want to pretend like they're executives in the MLB. Like it's somebody that's like, oh, my buddy is a general counsel at the NFL. It's like, or people that are like, hey, this guy like used to own so I also filter feedback.
Yeah.
But they said, again, I really want to make sure I never speak on behalf of anybody, especially MLB. But they were like, I think the MLB understands that money is an issue, but you clearly have a model that, oh, by the way, every banker and PE fund is like, yeah, this is the model. But they know that I know finance as well. So
Yeah.
to them, it's not weird. They come to me because they're like, they always used to say, you're the only guy who's like a storyteller who can read a P&L. So they're like, you speak both jargons. You could talk to a hippie creative as you could talk to us, the supposedly buttoned up finance guys. But the point was they go, what MLB ultimately wants is they don't want to deal with consortiums. They don't want to deal with corporations, who's like the VP of whatever that isn't going to be there. So they're like, if you're willing to be that guy, and I'm a bit of a masochist, this is also like a bit crazy because you got the government that will be, we don't want their money for the stadium or the franchise, but I really believe that Montreal needs an Expo 67 like redevelopment investment project. And I think, in a city that everybody thinks of, where can I build new condos? False modesty aside, I'm arriving with like a cultural, creative, and yes, commercial, but the Watch Mojo, we built the content, then we worried about it.
Yeah.
So when people are like, why are you giving us hope? Who are you? I'm like, I never sought fame or popularity. This is why it seems like out of left field to you. And not that I turned my back on Montreal at all. I love Montreal, but I was facing like Madison Avenue, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and Wall Street, if anything, and really Main Street America. I'm like this guy that like was born here, was like forgotten about, ventured out, had to survive. I thrived, and I come back now with this army and this arsenal, and I could do this. So long as the government is open, I will continue to do it. But eventually the league, I was hoping, but the league was just like no comment.
Yeah.
And that's all I needed to
Yeah.
hear, that that I'm here. When you're ready, I'll do it. I mean, I was thinking of my eventual, I don't want to commit to anybody because there's a lot of demand on that side. But what I wanted was, I was like, if I could get them a better deal today, saying 2 billion. Sorry for the prelude, your answer. I think Tampa Bay transacting for 1.7 is a floor. I read Rob Branfred, the commissioner. He said we don't want to do it below 2. So obviously in my analysis, I use 2. I think if there's a work stoppage, I hope they don't do that because that would be shooting themselves in the foot. I still don't think they would sell a team for less, but it would reduce. Like there's mark to market. But my point is, what somebody would be willing to pay for a team would go down. I'm not talking my book, just common sense. Like if they were crazy enough to want me to advise them, I would say if you do a work stoppage, you're going to see a near-term reduction of 10, 20,
Absolutely.
30% in values. But so long as you don't transact, it's like a stock. If you don't sell it, who cares if it
Right.
goes down? But I'm just saying, to set expectations to the public, I use 2. I could imagine MLB wanting maybe 2.5 more down the road when they come. I was just, because I was so preliminary, I was afraid if they come back after the labor stoppage, after renegotiating the rights, TV rights, which again, Watch Mojo is like a big channel on YouTube, would give them quite an interest. And then our international, 9 million people in Latin America, millions elsewhere. So I was like, yeah, if they come back and ask like for 5 billion, like the way the NBA would, I was like, I wouldn't be the guy that was going to go vouch to an investor. But now I realize even if it's 2030 or 2028, it won't be that much. The delta isn't that much. So now I'm like the opposite. And in fact, now I'm actually going to go out and tell all the leagues that because the investors are like, okay, you do this, what's next? So I was like, there's all these other ideas I have. They're like, okay, so we're actually going to go out and do a process. And it's not, I swear, I mean, if MLB wants to call me tomorrow and saying, we'd like to come to, we're talking fantasy negotiations here. I would love to believe in my plans. I would love to hear from MLB so I could tell with conviction to my soon to be investors that I want to make sure we leave some capital for the Expos. Like it would really suck if I just become this villain in the end that does this.
Right.
Like, and I'm live. This is super. Like, sure, the Expos are the spark. I do this, and then the investors are like, we don't have capital for the Expos in 2028 because we plunked down 300 million for this, a billion for that. Like that, I would not love. But again, if I take their money, I have a duty to do what makes sense. But so I would love to build the Expos as part of this roll up to Granicus Sports Entertainment, which is going to be kind of like Monumental Sports.
Yeah.
What Leonsis has in DC, which is you own, or the Fenway Group. I mean, I'm not doing anything different, but I'm doing it in a different way.
Yeah.
Let
me throw out two things here to close it out. Number one, you're doing this, right? Like we're talking about this, and I know it's been
it's happening
10
every
days.
day. I mean, if you follow my LinkedIn or X, in real time, people are,
You're doing this.
Well, wait, I will wait for MLB to like RFP me to submit it officially, which I'm assuming is a few years. But everything else of like continuing to listen to investors, but like one investor reached out to me through an intermediary that told them I'm doing this because they had already, and I don't think I'm saying, if I would never say something that is confidential. This is generic. They were like, we've already put in bids for previous things we did not get. So they're like, we've done our research already, but they're like, we generally back an individual. So they're like, that you're in Montreal, we're ready to go.
Right.
And we want baseball team. So I'm doing this now. Ideally, this story ends with the Expos play ball, and you're invited. I swear, you're invited.
Thank you.
Next to me. I mean, I've told a couple people next to me, and my wife and daughters will be next to me. But my point is, you'll be with us. No, I'm going to do this because it is in my wheelhouse, and I think it's super hypocritical when leaders talk about, if I could call myself a leader, when people who have decision-making powers say, I'm a servant leader, I'm driven by principle and purpose. And then you hear the cries of the people. And also now more and more with the civic development project, you're like, you could transform Montreal. I don't want my name on any building. I don't care about that. But I'm like, Montreal, like I was researching with ChatGPT, I won't lie, just as it's a useful aid. Eventually I was like, tell me where Montreal would be in 2050 if this happens. Not just the stadium, the civic, the whole development zone. And if it doesn't, that's what made me kind of lean in. Because I was like, okay, you're some kid born in Iran, crazy situation in 78, whatever reasons, not the point, not the theme of this podcast. You go to Spain for a year, you come to Canada at the age of 6. Everything that you have is because of this country and this city. Everything I have is because of YouTube and entrepreneurship. I'm like, don't be what you criticized effectively 20 years ago.
Got it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you spell it out that way. The last thing I want to get to, right, is expansion with Major League Baseball has been discussed for years in different places. I know you are aware of Nashville and Salt Lake City and Portland. How do you see Montreal entering that difficult conversation? Because if there really are only 2 slots coming up whenever, how does Montreal make sure that if you're ready, you are a top choice? And I feel like it's been a little bit disrespectful almost that when we talk about these other cities, we talk about these other spots. How come Montreal, after losing a team, how come you're not instantly first in line to get the next crack at it?
I don't have a sense of entitlement. First of all, as with my early competitors in Watch Mojo, I wish them well. I love all, I mean, I've been to Des Moines, Iowa, not that it's a bad place, meaning like that represents middle America.
Sure.
Where people say, I loved it. I love every nook and cranny of America. So I wish Salt Lake, Portland, Nashville, Charlotte, all the teams well. I do think if you put a market, like if I was, let's say if MLB, I swear this, I'm trying to be sincere. Let's say MLB brought me in and said, Ash, you're a media guy, yada, yada. You know, you also know Montreal. Like, what do you think? I'd say, look, if you put a market, baseball team in any of these cities, it benefits that city. It's not going to be transformative for you. I would say it makes sense. Like you add teams, you get more viewership, like checks off those boxes. I would say Montreal, let's not even get into the narrative and the PR of like coming back. I said Montreal, first of all, a second city in Canada
Yep.
would be really useful for many reasons. But I said you would get a French outlet, like exposure, that then opens up a far more compelling story to La France, la Belgique, la francophonie globale, African countries. Because of the fact that the returns on all sports franchises, although MLB has lagged, has been so substantial and future performance is not based on previous performance,
Right.
you're going to need global to grow. So I think Watch Mojo and Montreal, sorry, let's just Montreal gives you a lane. Then I said, oh, it just so happens that Watch Mojo is a global media company on the most powerful media platform, YouTube. And I'm like, the reality is when it comes to fan engagement and international, like we have 9 million subscribers in Latin America, we're in Asia, Middle East, Africa, everywhere. I'm like, I really think that if we were, and I've read enough to know like what we can and cannot offer the league and what we can and cannot offer other teams and whether it, I've done that homework.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that we could just crank it out. And the final thing, again, like using, it's like a problem solving. 20 years ago, we built a tech platform, which was a content management system, a CMS. But as we start to use freelancers all over the world, it became a CRM, like a creator, not a customer, but a creator relationship management. And it manages our supply chain, which is an ERP, enterprise resource planning. That I now realize we need to just add a few tools, make it into a sports fan, like the kid who watches a clip and adds a comment or mashes it up and then shares it on social media. I'm going to present this to MLB and other leagues and teams and be like, do you want to use this? The best thing you could have done, should have done, is to own YouTube. Too late. But if you own the platform that Watch Mojo, the most successful media brand on YouTube ever, used and built to be successful on YouTube, I'm like, you could play into the creator economy, which is worth $200 billion today, and it'll be 1.4 trillion in like 6 years. I think so. What I'm going to do is kind of like a big ass trade, future considerations, like I'm going to go to them with like, as the pro that I am, as a deal maker that I am, and it just so happens I'm a crazy passionate sports fan. It just so happens I live in Montreal and be like, yes, when the time comes, Montreal should be there. And the reality, I will say this time, not to MLB, I just mean regarding MLB's math. I do think if Montreal does not get this, first of all, I'm very impatient. There's a part of me that's like, screw it. I don't know if you have 5 years to spend on this, but I do think if Montreal does not get a team in this window, then it's done. Because even though the island of Montreal is an island 10 times bigger than Manhattan, just knowing about the lands and all that and where this stadium should be, this new stadium, if we don't get a team now, I think the window shuts down. Whereas if you give Montreal a team, ideally sooner, so I could get the
Right.
ballpark going, I think you could give Nashville, Portland, Charlotte, anywhere else a team as the second, and you could go to them 4 years later. That money's not going to go. I'm not going to be I'm a nobody, but I'm not going to do this in 7 years and
Right.
9 years.
Right.
I'm like, I put my best foot forward. I'm a nobody, but I could do this. There's Montreal as a stakeholder. There's the league. But if they don't nobody has to appreciate anything. But if they don't like reciprocate that, hey, this guy could get it done, I'm not here to play hero. I'll be like, I offered, they didn't want my help, I'll move on. Very simple.
You've done a great job up to this point. I know you called yourself the spaceman that Montreal might need in this one. So we appreciate your efforts in going to outer space and trying to get this done. And look, again, as an A's person, looking at an Expos person, I appreciate the effort. I wish Oakland had somebody similar. Maybe Oakland will at some point. Maybe it takes a little while.
And the reality is, some people in the local scene were like, you kind of came out of nowhere. And I said, because I don't seek attention. I built Watch Mojo. I didn't build Ash Mojo. But I was like, I'm here. And there's a lot of no, but the reality is we do exist, but it's also, you gotta lean in.
Yeah. You got to put yourself. You got to put yourself out there, though. Like you do have to. At some point, you can do all the business, you can get all the finances together, but at some point, like you have to promote what you're doing. You got to put it out there. You got to knock on MLB's door. They're not going to
get in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want the ball.
Yep. Ash,
No,
thank
no, there's no like Cy Young. There's no Cy Young winner. There's no Cy Young winner who didn't want the ball.
right.
You
Right.
know.
You got to start a game. Ash, thank you so much for this conversation. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers.